So, choices and consequences demystified. Now let's do an actual start. Welcome to Voice Active Kindness. Running it down. I just made like 4 Fallout 4 videos, and those are like goofy, like roleplay and have fun things. But this is going to be a run and gun, explain something using the game, using other games. This isn't specifically about Fallout 4. I was going to do Fallout New Vegas, but I couldn't find the right save, so I just went to this. And this is personally my favorite DLC of the game, and I'll explain why. Because this is a great example of choices and consequences um, in video game history. So yeah, like and subscribe. Hope you enjoy, and we'll take a little hiatus. Up next will probably be a Fortnite video where I'll explain. I'll probably yeah, I'll probably go more into meta explanation of such and such, but for now, let's focus on the topic. Of course. Just checking notes. Alright, so, choices and consequences. First, let's delve into the name. Choices and consequences. You make a choice, and there are consequences. Good or bad. Consequences doesn't have to be necessarily bad, you know. It could be good. It could mean that your character helped the village, and the village likes you now. I mean, not necessarily. Hold on. Hold on. We're just making sure the audio works. Okay, that's good enough. Alright, now I'm actually talking. Alright, so, right. Most games operate on the idea that you, the character, play a hero or a villain, so it gives you a correct and an incorrect option. The idea that the incorrect leans you towards your villain arc, basically. You go to a town that's asking for help, but why should you help them? They're in your way. If anything, you need to get out of there. And since they've wasted your time, you might as well deal with them. That's how most games work. Things like Mass Effect, two-person games, two-choiced games. Certain games like Fallout and like arguably interpretation choice games. Like you make the choice in your head, like Silent Hill. There is no clear choice, but you have the option to build your character. Those also present a more of a complex story-based thing. So the question about choices and consequences is it a mechanic or is it a story? You see, in Fallout, it's more of a story. You, the player, go into a place and you interact with it, and because of that, the people are forever changed, and you're a hero or you're a villain or you're something in between. Maybe you're neutral, which is an option in the game, but the idea is that it tells your story better. Right. Hold on. Yeah, it tells your story better. But in other games, like Detroit Become Human, it's a mechanic. Yes, there's a story involved, but you have this giant branch of ways to finish the game. Completely different from each other. And yes, it's a story-based game, completely story, but its main drive is the choices and consequences. You can use it as a main mechanic, or you can use it as a story mechanic. So when we look into choices and consequences, story-wise, Fallout-wise, it builds your character, but mechanic-wise, it builds a more world character. It builds the world, and arguably your character changes the world, but you make the choice as opposed to you set things in motion. This sounds extremely complicated, but that's the reason we said demystify. So, I'm gonna bring up examples. Far Harbor is a great example of choices and consequences when the choices lead to outcomes and not consequences, which I much prefer. Choices and consequences mean you directly alter something and you directly get a result. If you kick over a rock and you throw it into the street, later on in the story, your vehicle topples over because you did this. That's the most basic idea I can think of. But in this game, in this DLC specifically, you kick over a rock, and because of it, someone sees the rock, thinks, "Oh, I should move it out of the way," and while they're moving out of the way, you brush past them, and because you brush past them, they become your mortal enemy. It's like that kind of outcome. You didn't do it, like you didn't cause this, but because of your actions, you now have a different, complete story, which is why I like this DLC because you kick a couple rocks over in the highway. Let's just say that. But how else do? Is this a motel? I did not know this was the location. Okay. To combat choices and consequences with linear design, or even better, non-linear design that looks like choices and consequences, like what Bioshock does. Like you don't have control over the story. Cormac McCarthy's philosophy, who's a beloved book writer who recently passed away, his philosophy was that you don't make choices. You have to accept those choices. Most of the time, you're scroggling around looking for a way to avoid them, but you accept them instead. And that's what most like FPS, like Bioshock Infinite or even Metro, are about. Like you make a choice, but in the end, you have to accept your situation. Not saying you have an agency, but it is saying that you don't have ultimate power like you think you do, like a choices and consequences hero of Fallout does. Those people, they have complete agency. They don't have to accept anything. You have to kill this person? No, you don't. Instead, I'm going to free them and fight everyone off. Whereas other games are like you could do that, but it might disrupt events completely, which is a much bigger problem, as you can see. In this game, you could. Well, no, in this game, yeah, no, it's more on the choices and consequences freelance side. If you don't want to destroy the railroad, you tell the Brotherhood no, and they say you have to make that choice or you're against us. And yes, it's forced, but it's still there. You're not escorted to the railroad and given a gun. Like what would happen in a linear game where like it's like we need to fight the railroad and the main character would be like I would never fight these people, they're innocent and they haven't done anything, and they would say well we're going to fight them without you. Like that would be an example of it, but you can make the choice before they get destroyed is what I'm saying, as opposed to something else. So that's the story aspect. When choices and consequences is a story, it means that you are causing something to happen and your outcome causes the game to change. But when it's more of a mechanic, when it's more like the game is about the way things change, like going down a different path, essentially. Like, and I keep using Detroit Become Human, even though I don't have. Whoa. Okay. Uh. I don't have a PlayStation, but I played the game when it came out. The reason I use that game is because you make choices, yes, but it's more like different paths. You're not really altering anything, and there's a lot of instances where instead of you altering your character, you alter the story, right? And you're not even altering one character. You aren't in charge of a person. You're in charge of the story. And sometimes, instead of controlling Connor or the ex-butler android or deviant, sorry, you are controlling the president of the United States, which is insane, right? No, no. Yeah. So that's more of a mechanic-based choices and consequences. You are controlling the story, but you're controlling the whole game, almost. And that's those two differences. That's how I distinguish choices and consequences from different games. Is it more of like you get to be your own person, and because of that, you control the story, or is it you get to control how the game flows and how events unfold? And then there's like basic choices and consequences, like what Wolfenstein did with the like you choose which one of your companions die. That's another example of choices and consequences. Yes, but it's more like you choose what color you choose what type of candy you're gonna eat later, basically. not like you choose how entire events unfold. Although ironically, like you're forced into an option because it's canonical in that game. I forget which one it is, but there is one character that you're supposed to let live because it changes the way the game unfolds entirely. But like I said, that's not like a you're controlling the story kind of thing. That's just that's a basic option. Like that's like Dishonored. Another example of that is exactly happening in Dishonored. You choose in Dishonored 2. You choose between starting off as the daughter or the bodyguard from the first game. And yes, that's a very important choice, and it alters the way the entire game works. You're not doing it because you feel empathy towards one character. You're doing it mainly to choose what type of candy you want. And candy means what type of game you want. Do you want to play the game male or female? Do you want to play the game uh, like with this like background or with this background? Like Fallout New Vegas does that. Fallout New Vegas has both types. It has mechanic and it has non-mechanical, story-based. Let's see. Okay. Anywho, let's continue on. So we've discerned the spectrum between story and mechanic based. And remember what I said about New Vegas being like, oh, it's like in between. That's what I mean. Like, if it's a mechanic, it can be distinguished. There are parts of the game where if you start off so and so, the game will be different in a way. Like, you can't interact with a ranger who had just been through a traumatic instance and is hitting on all female NPCs. But if you're a male NPC, then you don't get that interaction, which is not it's not a thing you chose because you want that. It just happens to be there. It's a different flavor of game to play. Another example I'm gonna bring up is Outer Worlds actually, because that has the type of choices and consequences I just talked about. It has, if you start the game, you have the choice of having like a background as like a clerk or a bank teller or something. You know, it's something like trivial, like it's just like who you were. Arguably, that game doesn't use that mechanic at all. Like you kind of just, it's just a part of the game. But right? But it's not. I'm not going. Okay. I'm not going to use the stream to complain about Outer Worlds. I am not going to do that. I told myself I wouldn't, and I will not. But basically speaking, uh, if the game had a little bit more sensitivity of your choices, then if you chose to be a bank teller, then there'd be certain scenes when you'd say, "Oh, I used to handle cash. Let me count it for you," and you do that immediately. Or if you were like a bodyguard, but like you stood in front of a house, basically, then it's also like, "Oh yeah, I'm used to sitting around dialogue," you know, something like that. Like your choices is more or less you the character kind of thing. I know this place is. I can't do it right now because like it involves dialogue. I'm just kind of trying to like talk here. So, anywho, so now that we've discerned mechanic versus story versus like you make a character versus you make a world, let's talk about what a choice is in a game. A choice is. Hold on. That's a little bit more there. Okay. I'm so broken it breaks the audio. Okay. Here we go. Actually, speaking about it, let me just check that really quick. Yeah, okay, we're good. Anyway, so choices. A choice. A choice can be anything. It could be like we've already discerned that like some of them are trivial, where like you choose what type of character you are, and then somewhere down the line you choose which person to save, and it affects the game. A choice is something that affects the game, or you. Well, which is also in the game. A choice affects the game, and a consequence is something that happened because of it, regardless of its like you could argue you didn't cause it, like the thing I said earlier about you kicked a rock into traffic, and because of that, someone became your sworn enemy, which makes no sense, but it was caused. You may not know that. Um, a little tidbit about choices and consequences that I encourage all of you to go through is when you make a choice and there's a consequence, you sometimes know what happened. You, like the person playing, know, but the character doesn't. I encourage you to try and play like that. Like, you see this person and you have literally no idea why they're fighting you. Like, that's a little tidbit, but I've never been here before. What? So, right, let's keep going. Choices and consequences right. So, consequence and choices. One is the cause, and the other is the effect. What else? Alright. Those purple? That's weird. That must be some sort of glitch with the mods they have in. Right. So, let's talk about more broad strokes, like Skyrim, for example. Skyrim has choices and consequences, but it's more like pathways. Arguably a little bit on the side of Detroit Become Human. I'm not saying Skyrim doesn't have role-playing capabilities. It has extreme role-playing capabilities. That's something we should delve into. Role-playing capabilities of choices and consequences. Can you use them to manage your character? Yes and no. You can use it in a game like Fallout because it's Fallout. Your character is making these choices. You are making these choices. But in like a game like Detroit Become Human or Heavy Rain, you're already given a character, and they're gonna change if you save their child or you free them from whatever, from like captivity. But they're not going to like you're not gonna change to your design. You can't make Connor the android suddenly start eating heaps of popcorn, but you can do that in this game. You can go out, find popcorn, and eat it, even though I don't think there's any popcorn in the game. There is definitely in 76. But like I said, if the character has a set thing, then it limits your choice, because it's storytelling then, right? Like, this game has a little bit of restriction. You can't not be a dad. You're a dad regardless. You could have, like, in New Vegas, you could have made a character that strictly doesn't want to be a dad, interacts with one character and says, "Oh, you might be my son. Let's hope not." Uh, right? As opposed to this game, which is like you have a son, and regardless of whatever, you may be pushed into finding him because it has to do with the whole story. In my current playthrough, I'm choosing to make the son a detached thing from the Institute. I want my son's discovery to be as surprising as possible. I want my character to have almost to think that when they see their son in the flashback for Kellogg, I want the character to be like, "Oh, maybe my son's here," but there's no way you should immediately think that he's head of Institute, right? You don't have the choice. The character, don't have the choice to immediately think that your son's involved with the Institute. But in a game like New Vegas, you can say like, "Oh, my interesting thinking makes me realize that the Legion is weak once it gets its territory." You can be an over-philosophized Chad, if you would. Or you can be a bumbling idiot who's just like, I want to get rid of the bad guys, right? This massage is backbreaking, seems. Okay, let's get back to it. Right. So, let's think more about role-playing aspects of choices and consequences. Let's look more at extreme examples. I mentioned Bioshock, which said that your choices don't matter, like Cormac McCarthy. Your choices don't matter. You need to accept such and such. Let's talk about like the story. Like in the story of Bioshock Infinite, for example, you go in believing that you're trying to pay a debt, but it turns out that you're actually involved in this grand scheme. And what you need to accept is that you are part of it, and you're not the instrumental part. You're Booker DeWitt. You're saving Elizabeth. You're a main character, but you're not the character. Your job is to escort her from being young to being a mature person who has understood their full potential, which involves the ability to manipulate space and time. Spoiler alert, I guess. I definitely would love to play that game, but I can't because you can't stream Bioshock Infinite. So a lot of old indie games have that problem, from what I've heard. Another thing about choices and consequences you do admire is little bits of things you do in the game. Like in my last stream, I said that my character probably has no idea where his son is, and because of that, he could go anywhere. I'm not limited to just going into Concord because Codsworth said that there were people shooting at him. He didn't say, "Oh, sir, I could have sworn I saw so and so go in there." He had no idea. He didn't know. So it allows you to have a more free range option. Open world and choices and consequences is an extreme mechanic. Like, think about a game like Elden Ring, right? Elden Ring is open world, but there's no choices and consequences. It's more like pathways in that game. Like you're not, oh, I'm building my character to be like this. Your character doesn't say anything. There is no extreme revelation for your character. If anything, you figure out some story elements and some lore, but for all you know, your character knew this all along and just kept it to themselves. It's the equivalent of hearing about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard problem and then seeing it in a magazine and not saying anything. You might know. So it limits your importance of character action, is what I mean. But it's still an open world game. But how can an open world help you in terms of uh, player agency? That's what Fallout 4, New Vegas 3, or even parts of Bioshock 2, and a little bit. What was another game I played that had something like that? I'm just searching the archives. I played a game called Weird West, which had that. Like you are searching for so and so, so you can go anywhere. Why should you specifically want to find your son in this place? He could be in this place, right? Let's think about like 3. In 3, there's only 2 endings, technically speaking. There's like you can affect the world, but there's only 2 big endings. You either put this virus in the water supply, or you don't, and you let it become a pure, clean water source, right? Those are your 2 options, but you have the ability to tell the story of how you got there. Choices and consequences sometimes doesn't matter about the end, it matters about building your character. We're less talking about choices and consequences at this point, and more about RPG mechanics and role-playing mechanics, but I already kind of did a video on that. But it had shoddy audio, so I never posted it. Lol. Kind of like this one probably does. But, right, in that game, I first noticed it when I looked at the achievements. In the achievements for Fallout 3, you get achievements for reaching a certain level and being a certain karma. Like, reach level 5 with neutral karma, reach level 5 with bad karma, or 10 with good. And I got good for all of them because I'm such a doughboy when I play Fallout for the first time. I'm always just trying to make the right endings, of course. Um, but the reason it made me think is because, like, an evil lone wanderer still might want to save the water resource. Like, yeah, sure, like, oh, maybe I hate the world, and maybe I just want everything to burn. But I mean, arguably speaking, you learn later on in the game that you will also be killed by this water source since you have Wastelander DNA. Long story short, the poison only kills people who have altered DNA. That's like mucky, like because you've been raised in a radioactive area. And you now know that you are one of these people. So arguably, an evil person would want such device to be destroyed, right? You wouldn't want, like, even if you're evil and you're like, oh, this will kill tons of people, why would you want to purposely hurt yourself? So it allows you to make a choice that has death. That's something I should have talked about. Death, choice, death. Yes, you can be the character who, I guarantee you, like, half of whatever I'm saying is possible to do, because I'm just gonna wait until I kill this guy. You have the choice to kill this person, but, maybe you just wanna fly 50 rounds into them. Come on. Not worth it. Whatever. Okay. Choice death. Remember what I said about the Wolfenstein choice and how it completely alters the game? That's an extremely depth choice, but it's not a building choice. It's not an important choice, but it has a lot of depth. That depending on how complicated a choice is, it has a more complicated outcome. Unless it's Outer Worlds, the game, in which case it has zero outcome, and it's not a good choice. Sorry, I'm narking on that game again, but, like, seriously, they could have tried one. But anywho, when a choice is insane, like the ones in New Vegas, like, where you have the choice to, so you have the choice to help one of your companions become either healed or basically nihilistic, right? That has a lot of depth because it alters the way the character's AI is, because it gives them a new set of perks. Where did you get that? It alters the way the character works, right? So it has depth, but you could argue, but those choices come down to a speech check. You see, one character, Raul, will talk to you about his stories, right? He'll say like, oh, this happened to me, and because of it, I've kind of given up on things. And you can say to him, well, it happened to you, but it doesn't mean that... It doesn't define you, and you can still be the kind of person that your late sister wanted you to be. But it's not like an insane, like, you have to go through 50 steps to do this. The only thing you need to do is listen to him, and then you make that choice, and it has a lot of depth. As opposed to a game like, say, what's one that had like a funky, do a lot of stuff choice? In New Vegas, there's another insane, crazy death choice where you have to do everything for the Brotherhood. You need to find them an air purification system. You need to find them, like a radio device. You need to find all these things, and the reason why is because at least you'll be becoming a Brotherhood of Steel agent, or a Brotherhood of Steel, a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, because you want that choice, and that choice does have depth. The choice to be a Brotherhood of Steel member has depth because you get access to supplies. You get to tell the Brotherhood of Steel not to fight the NCR, which is extremely important because you don't want them to fight the NCR, or at least I don't, because I like the Brotherhood of Steel, personally. Ugh, this is a hard character. Okay, right? So, complicated choices don't always have a lot of depth, but like in Outer Worlds, if you go out of your way to get a dress for one of your companions, it doesn't really alter the game. It helps your companion feel better, and I don't think she gets any perks for it. I think I'm pretty sure that it just affects her storyline, which is important because you need to finish all the companion quests, sure. But it doesn't relegate the game in that, like, oh, I didn't do this, so because of this, this doesn't happen. It changes the story mechanics, but it doesn't change the gameplay mechanics, which, if we want to get even more interesting, I need, like, a chart to say, like, does this affect mechanics, or does this affect story? There he is. Hey, buddy. I think this guy has an explosive Gauss rifle or something. This is just... Damn. I mean, not every choice has to be... I feel like I'm like a alien explaining to the main character in the end of a game, like, this is what your path leads to kind of thing. Except I'm being way too chill about it. Like, bro, like, your choices have actions, and because of that, you need to understand them, kind of thing. Not like, look beyond the stars and see how you've altered them. That's a great, I think that's a thing used in Destiny or something, like the idea behind, oh my god. There's a, yeah, I think it's Mass Effect, where, like, one of the alien characters says that, like, look at the millions of people who are dead and tell me if honor is worth anything. This guy is pretty good. Not good enough. Hitman's got right. Oh, 10% damage while aiming. So maybe that's what it was. I think this is the first ghost rifle my character has ever picked up. They don't start showing up until a little later in the game. Anywho, right, yeah. Choice, death. What happens when a choice has no death? Then it's mainly building to you. Remember all that stuff I said about Fallout, like, making your character evil? Your character's evil, but has he done anything evil? Like, say you just stole a bunch of stuff. I mean, like, you steal stuff, that's your thing, but you're not changing the game or anything. Unless the end of the game comes down to how much stuff you stole. Some things are superficial in the game, choices and consequences. And then sometimes they're extremely important. Like, there's a very old game, which is based off of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where if you don't have a babblefish, you can't beat it because it translates for you. And it may seem like you just don't want it or you forgot about it, but it changes the game together. Some choices are like that. Like, there's a game. It's not the Quarry, but it's like the precursor to it, where if one of the characters drinks alcohol before they go into the game, they die because of resurfacing after drinking alcohol. They die. And it's not something you planned nor you wanted, but it's a surprise consequence. That might be one of our last subjects. Surprise consequences, things you didn't account for, right? There are barely any in a game like this. Mostly horror games have these because it's tension, and I don't care about that. It's tension and right. But in a game where you want to build your character, of course you want to know how things unfold. Why wouldn't you? But in certain games, choices and consequences aren't connected. There's a choice, and you simply want to have a consequence. Sometimes, like, Wolfenstein doesn't tell you how things will interact. Like, it doesn't say next to the guys, if you kill this friend, so and so will happen, or if you kill this friend, this will also happen. Instead, it's more like you choose one. At this current moment, make a choice. Not like I said, not every time do you get to be the cool, like, super boss who knows everything that's going on. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn I think it has different endings, but it doesn't. Sorry, hold on. Ugh, okay. I haven't played that game in a while. I have a friend who played it, and I asked him about this, and he said that the game's linear. It's linear, but the reason why people like it is because you're supposed to be like, you make most of the choices you make are outlining how cool the character is, right? Superficial choices in certain games, that's what they do. Dying Light 2 is a great example of that. In Dying Light 2, which is a zombie game, which is the sequel to Dying Light, you make a lot of choices in the game, and they add up, but they're not singularly important. They all, like, there's one where you can help someone, and because you help them, he's like, oh, I will not kill you in this instance, right? And you do that with another character. Actually, you do that with, like, half the characters. You help them, and they don't kill you. And for some of the characters, you have to do all of them. So they're extremely important. It's like, it's less choices and consequences and more, you need to make sure this happens. Choices and consequences, quite literally, if you think about it, are buttons you have to push in the game. Let's think about choices and consequences more simply, not like philosophy altering things, simply put. for choices and consequences, for some games to function, you need to do certain things. For example, in Cyberpunk 2077, you need to accumulate a certain amount of respect points between you and the like AI that's trapped in your head, Keanu Reeves. Right? You need to establish a relationship. You can't get the secret ending unless you do. And it's not a choice and consequence because if you want that desperately, then you're doing it. When a lot of RPG games come out, one of the big things that people will check is the endings, of course. And they won't say anything like, oh, I want to know the exact ending, they want to know how to get to it. How do you get the good ending and how do you get the bad ending? And some of them are more like, okay, play a loosely good character, like Metro and Metro Exodus, like play a loosely good character and you'll get the good ending. As opposed to another game like Cyberpunk 2077, which almost encourages you to find out the best way to do a game, right? Oh, like I thought for a solid second this was like floating, and I was like, the game is just breaking. Oh my gosh, that was a good fight, by the way. I haven't had like a strong enemy in a while. Harumph. Okay. This is gonna be a super long one, but ahem. I mean, how do we round this off? Choices and consequences. What's the grand scheme of what I said? As earlier before, I said that you want your character to be either an example of you or an extreme example. You use these choices to build your game and your character, and sometimes you're restricted to it. If you wanted, say you wanted complete control over the game, you said to a game, I want to build everything, I want to be able to interact with the world, I want, like, before the game starts for me to choose where companions start, then imagine if the game quite literally gave you a piece of paper and said, do it all yourself then. Right? Just write your own story. And I mean, some can go as far as to do that slightly, but I mean, in the end, if you want to make your own choices and consequences both at the same time, you want to make your own game essentially, not play a game. Ironically, this conversation rounds back to what a video game is. It's a story that you get to control, and choices and consequences is a part of that. The idea of you change the game based on this and this. Oh, I can't get this. I know what this is. This has to do with the quest. Yeah. Hold on. Right. So, like, I mean, I like all these examples are just coming back to me. Like Mafia 3, you in the end of the game, you have the choice to either walk away from the empire that you create or stay and use it, or even worse, kill all of your friends and take it over, in which case you get blown up by a priest who helped you in the beginning of the game. I know it's crazy. I highly recommend that game, actually. But the point is that you play the game because of the story of Link and Clay. My warning about choices and consequences is that you don't want to rely off of it too much. Well, yes, it's cool to investigate the world of Fallout by being your own person and pretending like you don't know anything, so you're going to discover it all as a character. It's largely important to just read the game. That's why my next video is going to be about how to research lore in a good way. I'm not going to say correctly because there's no correct way. But what I'm saying is that you shouldn't use choices and consequences to build your own world. You should use it to investigate a world. You choose to go into a door not because you know what's behind it, but because you want to investigate and figure out things. Choices and consequences builds the world because it uses the tools given to you. You use the toolbox given to you by the game, which is another extremely crazy way of saying what choices and consequences are. So, to round it off, choices and consequences, it makes the game by letting you make the game. And while that sounds corny, that's what it is. And my personal opinion on it is I like Fallout New Vegas slash Bioshock choices and consequences. I like it when a game either makes the choice for you, but lets you explore like what it means for you to go straight forward. Like that's what a lot of the games are about. Like linear FPS is like you're going forward, and what does that mean? Like Spec Ops: The Line, basically. Uh, and then there's the ultimate like you're in a world and you get to make choices, and those choices are either extreme or they're something casual, like you're a delivery man, even, right? And that's what appeals to me, at least. So, again, uh, hope you learned something. I know it was extremely complicated, and you know, I definitely didn't do a good job of explaining the choices aspect. But yeah, that's well. It looks like we have our work cut out for us. I'd like to dedicate this video to what's I'd like to dedicate this video to our loyal followers, Fires OO Gaming and the Broken Bodisi 666, both epic names. Taking a hiatus until probably about 2 days. We'll play Fortnite. We'll explain some meta stuff. I don't just play the game to play the game, even though the last one was really goofy. Next couple videos are going to be more instructional on, gaming culture, I guess. But like always, subscribe, watch whatever video pops up on YouTube, and uh, last mission. Here's a mission for choice and consequences. Don't look into anything about the consequence and just make like if you were in life or death situation kind of thing. That's my instructions for it. So have a good day and voice act out. Well, voice act out when he ends the stream because it takes forever to turn on. Yeah, goodbye.